I get a couple of different press releases this week from two different sides of the same case, basically claiming victory. And this involves the Secretary of State, in an ancillary capacity also, the Attorney General, and they're the one putting out a press release saying, we voluntarily dismissed something involving that guy, Tony Daunt. He's a plaintiff, but we win. Well, wait a minute. The other side says, no. We win this case, and it involves election law and voter registration. Well, with that, let's try to get some clarification from at least one of the parties, and that would be Mr. Daunt, who is our newest Board of Canvassers member and principal at the Michigan Freedom Fund. But in this case, he's acting as Tony Daunt, man about town. Good morning, sir. Welcome back.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me, Dave. Always a pleasure.
Appreciate you being here. Okay, that was the summation. Was anything wrong there? Was it primarily correct? We'll settle for that. Primarily and basically and essentially correct. Close enough?
Yeah, I think you actually did a pretty nice job of summing up how things have gone, in particular since the conclusion of the case just earlier this week.
Well, but usually one side claims victory, the other side says not much. But that didn't happen here, and it was confusing. So what did happen?
Well, back to the basics of it. Back early last year, working with my friends at the Honest Elections Project, we sent a letter to the Secretary of State's office saying, in examining Michigan's voter registration rolls and comparing that with national averages and census tract data, et cetera, Michigan has a number of areas that have basically impossibly high registration. For instance, one of the counties cited was Leelanau, with I think the number was either 106 or 116% voter registration rate, which is obviously impossible. And the Secretary of State's office, refused to respond to our letter to take the action we were seeking, which was curing those voter rolls and removing folks who shouldn't be on them. And as a result of that resistance and refusal to act, we filed suit. And the suit was filed in the early summer of last year. And Secretary of State's office sought to dismiss the suit, and it's baseless. They don't know what they're talking about. Well, in the meantime, after saying that, the Secretary of State sent out 7.5 million unsolicited absentee voter applications, and as we all know, at least 500,000 of those went back to the Secretary of State's office as being undeliverable, and then there were countless others where people got them, contacted us, contacted others, and said, my son, he moved to California 8 years ago. So those didn't go back as undeliverable. They just got thrown away by the folks who received them. So, that's pretty clear indication that the voter rolls and what the Secretary of State's office was working with were not secure, did not have, were not clean, had way too many people on them that shouldn't be on them. And only after losing a motion to dismiss and heading into discovery did we get some activity. And lo and behold, in the last couple of weeks, Secretary of State's office puts out a release. We're cleaning up 177,000 names from the voter registration rolls, and we intend to keep doing this in the future. And that's a pretty clear indication that our lawsuit had a clear impact on what was going on and forced them to act.
Well, then how can they claim victory on that? That's what I'm not. It was, I think they called it a voluntary dismissal. What does that mean? I'm not familiar with that term. So what does that mean?
Basically it means that both parties have come to an agreement on dropping the lawsuit. We dropped it without prejudice, meaning that, if we think that the voter rolls require further legal action to clean them up, then we have that right
pick it up.
To sue.
You can hop back in the seat again, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And
but from their end, if you both agree to dismiss, but you didn't agree to that with prejudice until they had put these things into position, and they weren't there when you started your lawsuit. Is that clear?
Yes, correct. That's exactly right. That we wouldn't be dropping this lawsuit if there hadn't been that action to remove
Tony, you're
those
not
names
claiming,
from that list.
Tony Daunt, Michigan voter, wasn't claiming as a plaintiff that there was rampant fraud going on, but you thought there was, because of this, the potential for that. Am I right, or is that off base?
Yes, you are very right, and that's what was so disappointing about, in particular, the statement from from Dana Nessel, the Attorney General's office, in their press release that this is just, yet another unsubstantiated claim. And it's so dangerous and reckless to conflate people like myself in this lawsuit just seeking to clean up our voter rolls, I've been very clear throughout this process since Election Day that the most ridiculous and wild claims were untrue, unfounded, and basically conspiracy theories. And so to conflate that type of rhetoric with the things we're trying to do, which is just protect our system and remove avenues for fraud, is dangerous and it undermines the whole system. And it's unfortunate that the Attorney General chose to take
you're right
that
about
step.
Tony, I'll give you credit here because you made a distinction immediately after the election when you said, there's never a doubt on which side you're on politically. I don't think so. But you said, we're not claiming any of these wild notions because there's no fact in it. But we'll go after things that we do know, and we'll go after them with a vengeance. But the other stuff, you didn't want anything to do with that. I mean, I think that we can be pretty clear. We've had you on the show talking about that. That puts you as a bit of an outlier on the GOP side with many, at least for a while.
Indeed, and I've taken quite a bit of heat from folks on my own side, but I pride myself and the organization I work for on our intellectual honesty and consistency, and willing to stand up for things we believe in and to do so in the strongest of terms, respectfully, of course, but not willing to make crazy leaps into unfounded conspiracy theories just because it may, quote unquote, help our side or my side. It's important that both sides engage in that type of intellectual honesty. And unfortunately, statements like made by the Secretary of State and the Attorney General in their release undermine that.
The other side is kind of putting this into the voter suppression category, and you could see where some would follow along that path. Why is that wrong?
It's not voter suppression when you're removing people who aren't properly eligible to vote in a location, whether that's in a city or a county or in the state. People who are eligible to register to vote and vote, we encourage them to do so, to educate themselves and vote in the way that they think supports their worldview best. But let me
flip it around then. Why would they not have wanted to deal with this many months ago? Why did it take a legal case to do this? If we're about doing things completely right in Michigan, why did it take a legal case to push them against, to push them up against it and make them act? Why?
Unfortunately, that's something you'd have to ask them to really get to the bottom of it, because I hate to
we've tried.
Motives at play,
Believe me, we've tried. We've tried. We have.
I think it's an unfortunate, the best reason would maybe be just, incompetence or laziness, wanting to handle this issue. The more kind of nefarious motive would be they like having those names out there because it is an avenue for fraud. Now, I particularly don't believe that for the most part, but it does bring that into question, that when you provide such evidence that this many people are on our rolls improperly and they don't take action until they're forced to by a lawsuit, it questions the integrity of the system.
Do you have any other cases out there pending right now, or are you legally you have a clean slate legally?
Tapped out.
Exactly.
In terms of as a defendant, I'm clean as a whistle.
Good for you.
There's one other suit out there, the Daunt v. Benson, related to the redistricting commission that is still active and live in federal district court over in the Western District. But that's just kind of, there's some action a month or so ago, but just kind of in a holding pattern on that one.
They have some map drawing to do here, and in relatively short order. Are you anxious to see what transpires?
Very anxious. I'm very curious to see what comes out of it and what they do with these maps and how they handle the delay in the census numbers.
Yeah, and that's not a little deal right now, and it's putting those who would challenge for races. It puts, I believe, incumbents here at quite an advantage at the moment, and if they don't have enough advantage already. But Yeah, that's still to be played out. Tony Daunt, normally when we talk to him, he is head of the Michigan Freedom Fund. We're talking about some political issue and policy point. This time over a lawsuit with, I guess you could say, competing press releases this week, talking about spiking the football, declaring victory, but wanted to get their take on this. Tony, always appreciate you coming on. Very interesting stuff. Take care. Stay safe, okay?
You bet. Have a great weekend. Thanks, Dave.
All right, thanks. We're back here shortly on the Morning Wake Up here on 1320 WILS. WILS.